If you have ever been told you're strong and something inside flinched instead of feeling proud, this one is for you, not as a diagnosis, not as a lecture, as a recognition. On Monday, we looked at people who cut off everyone, the line between boundaries and walls. Today goes one layer deeper, because there is a particular kind of strength that the world admires, and the person carrying it knows is not what it looks like. It holds meetings and cooks dinners and answers texts and shows up on time and handles emergencies with a calm that impresses everyone in the room. And underneath all of that, the system that makes it possible has been running on emergency power for so long that it no longer remembers what normal operation feels like. Every nervous system starts with a range. Dan Siegel, a clinical professor of psychiatry at UCLA, introduced the concept of the window of tolerance in 1999 to describe this range. Inside the window, a person can experience stress, emotion, and challenge without losing the ability to think, connect, and respond flexibly. The heart rate rises during a difficult conversation and comes back down afterward. Anger flares and then passes. Sadness arrives and eventually lifts. The system oscillates within a band, moving up and down but always returning to a resting baseline. This is what the nervous system was designed to do: respond, recover, reset. The window is not narrow. It accommodates a great deal of life, loss, conflict, disappointment, fear, as long as the system has the capacity to return to baseline after each event. What happens when someone goes through too much, not one event, but a sequence or a sustained environment or a childhood that required constant adaptation to unpredictability, is that the window shrinks. Bessel van der Kolk in The Body Keeps the Score describes the mechanism in clinical detail. The brain that has been exposed to repeated threat learns that the threat can return at any time. The amygdala, which processes danger signals, becomes hyper-reactive. It fires faster at lower thresholds with less evidence. The prefrontal cortex, the part that normally evaluates whether the threat is real, gets overridden or urged more frequently. The result is a state called hyper-vigilance. The system stays in a low-grade alert mode even when the environment is objectively safe. Not because the person is choosing to be tense, because the neural wiring has been recalibrated by experience. The alarm system that was supposed to activate during emergencies now runs continuously. The brain adapted to danger by treating everything as potentially dangerous, and that adaptation in the moment it was formed was not a disorder, it was a survival strategy. The problem is that the strategy persists long after the danger has passed. The cost of running this strategy is not abstract. Bruce McEwen and Elliot Steller introduced the concept of allostatic load in 1993 to describe the cumulative biological price of chronic stress adaptation. When the emergency system runs full-time, not during a crisis but as a default operating mode, the body pays a bill that compounds daily. Elevated baseline cortisol that does not drop even in safe environments. Disrupted sleep architecture. The brain stays too close to wakefulness because deep sleep feels like vulnerability, like lowering the guard in enemy territory. Cardiovascular strain from a heart that runs faster than the situation requires. Immune suppression, digestive disruption, chronic muscle tension that produces real pain with no identifiable injury, pain that doctors cannot find because the source is not structural but neurological. The person functions, gets through the day, handles responsibilities, appears competent, earns the word strong from everyone around them, but the body is operating at a deficit that the calendar deepens. Every system that is supposed to run quietly in the background is being taxed by the foreground emergency that no longer exists externally, but still runs internally. The strength that the world sees is real. The cost that the world does not see is also real. And the cost accumulates in places the world never checks. There is a distinction that matters here and that most conversations about trauma avoid. Tedeschi and Calhoun, who developed the concept of post-traumatic growth in 2004, documented something genuinely real. People who come through severe adversity and develop new capacities, new perspectives, deeper relationships, a recalibrated sense of what matters. This happens. It is measurable. It is not a myth or a coping narrative. The part that gets lost is this. Post-traumatic growth and functional adaptation are not the same thing. Growth means the system processed the experience, integrated it, and expanded the window of tolerance. The person can sit with discomfort without being hijacked by it. Functional adaptation means the system learned to operate around the wound without processing it. The person functions, often at a high level, but the window has not expanded. It has narrowed to a band so tight that the only operating mode is controlled, vigilant, performative composure. From the outside, both look like strength. From the inside, one is expansion and the other is endurance. One is a person who has grown, the other is a person who has survived and called it growing because no other language was available. The sign that separates them is not dramatic, it is quiet. A person who has genuinely processed what they went through can tolerate uncertainty without flooding. They can sit in a moment of not knowing about a relationship, about the future, about their own feelings, without the system immediately switching to threat mode. A person who is functioning around unprocessed experience cannot. Uncertainty is the trigger. Because the original wound was almost always about something unpredictable, an environment where the next moment was not safe, where the rules changed without warning, where the people who were supposed to protect became the source of the threat, the nervous system learned unknown equals dangerous. And that equation, once written into the wiring, does not unwrite itself through willpower or time. It unwinds through a specific process, one that involves the body, not just the mind. Van der Kolk's central argument is that trauma is stored not as a memory, but as a physiological state. The body holds what the conscious mind has moved past, and the body requires a different kind of attention than the mind does. This is the heaviest video in the cycle, and it does not end with a fix. It does not end with a list of steps. It ends with a direction. Not healing as a place to arrive, but healing as a direction to face. The person running the emergency system did not choose to install it. The system was the correct response to an incorrect environment, and the first step, not toward recovery, not toward therapy, not toward anything with a label, the first step is recognizing that the strength everyone admires has a cost, and that the cost is not a sign of weakness. It is the bill for surviving something that should not have needed surviving. Recognizing the bill does not pay it, but it changes the relationship to it. And that change, quiet as it is, matters. On Friday, something warmer. People who feed stray animals. The mechanism underneath that impulse is not kindness. It is something more specific and more interesting than that.